wait a few seconds until everyone comes in. How are you guys doing? Good. There's only one guy saying it's good. Everyone else is kind of sleepy from all the sugar, right? There's another one saying it's good as well. That's great. So basically, instead of just standing here, I'll just wait a few seconds until everyone comes in. So I can tell you a little short story before I kick off my presentation. So I did a similar presentation on this topic in Meet Pagento, Sweden, and I met the guys from Snowdog, which asked me to come here and do the same presentation for you in Poland as well. But I did a trick this morning because I came in here and I just gave them a new presentation, which is a little bit more up-tempo. So it's great that you've had all these cookies and all these all the coffee, because I've added 20 extra slides compared to yesterday evening. So you need to fasten your seatbelts. So what do you say, Kuba? Should we kick it off? We kick it off. Okay, great. So they haven't seen it yet, maybe. I don't know. Let's see if they will kick me off the stage or not. So let's see if this works. Yeah, great. There we go. Great animation as well. Back to the 90s. So I'll be talking about internationalization. How to step up a gear towards world domination. Very humble, right? If you think this is a great presentation, you can just tweet on my handler, Saneback. And, or you think if I suck, please make sure to also add the hashtag MM16PL so everyone knows that I sucked as well. So the most important part of the presentation is probably myself. No one is laughing. Okay, great. Just feeling the temperature of the room. My name is Sïmon Saneback. I'm an entrepreneur. I founded my first business when I was 16 years old. I've founded probably 20 different companies, had a few exits, put a company on the stock exchange, and a few bankruptcies. So I've been working in the online industry for the past 15 years, and I do a lot of public speaking around the world. And one thing that always comes to be mentioned is like this e-commerce experts. I'm always presented like this e-commerce expert everywhere from Sweden, and it's not really true, because always people get surprised when they're expecting a Sïmon from Sweden. Comes a short, hairy, fat guy that does not look Swedish. That was another joke that is not working. Great, I'm feeling you, Poland. Thank you, guys. I love this. So are you hungry, guys, or what's going on? Let's bring in some cookies. No, but in all seriousness, about this e-commerce expert thing, I don't believe anyone could become an expert, to be honest. And it's because the industry is changing so rapidly. So I would not call myself an expert in any sense. Everything is changing, and it's just, you cannot even, guess what's going on. So before moving on, I would like to just mention something about this topic, internationalization. Come on in, guys. Don't be shy. Don't be Swedish. Come on in. There's actually a saying in Spanish, don't be Swedish. That's true. You say it in Spanish, which means don't be shy. So internationalization, and guys are like, oh, why should you even go global at all? I'm not going to talk, about the Internet of Things and all the, the shiny cones that there are. I'm not going to tell you about the drones or what futuristic technology there is. I'm going to talk about, where we were and where we are right now. And for this, I have a little short video from 1967. It's a 2-minute video, so let's roll it.
Fingertip shopping will be one of the many homemakers' conveniences. This video console will be channeled into the store of her choice. There, a camera will scan a display of wares, which she will select by push button. Another part of this console is a household monitor screen, which maintains a watch on critical areas in the house, swimming pool, or yard. What the wife selects on her console will be paid for by the husband at his counterpart console. All bills and transactions will be carried out electronically. A central bank computer will debit the family's account the amount of purchases and credit the department store, for example, informing the family's home computer at the same time.
So we can stop here.
Father, at the touch
What's so funny about it, I like when he gets headache because his wife bought so much on the internet. He's like, oh. But this is kind of an imagination. This is 1967, and they made this concept of like, how would we buy online in 1999, right? So this is kind of interesting to just give you what we thought would be the future. And looking moreover, the future is actually here, because suddenly, I can tell you about, from Sweden, China became the country where we buy the most from outside of Sweden, which is kind of a tremendous change, because for the past 20 years, it has been the neighboring countries, right? It's the other Nordic countries. And now China went from the 16th place to the 2nd, and now this year they are at the 1st place. And this is, the cross-border commerce is just changing so rapidly. I help a lot of different schools and universities when it comes to education about digitalization and also e-commerce. And the problem is when they do these books, they're outdated after 2 years. So you had to have a different strategy for doing the education. Okay, so that was kind of a foreplay for what I'm going to talk about today. The question is, why should you global at all? So why should you launch in new markets? Why should you go global? And it's quite simple. You will attract more customers. You will have more sales. Global e-commerce is projected to reach an amazing $2 trillion in sales globally. And it's just growing tremendously. Moreover, I have this kind of strategy where people talk about think global, act local. And for me, it's not when talking about acting local, it's not about establishing a local team, a local office, a local entity. It's not about that. It's about to try to look as local as possible, but having a global strategy. So what are the most important components to the customers that you should look local at? Before I get into those, I get this question quite often. So what mistakes have you done? What can you do wrong? And now they're filming. Otherwise, I would call them the most common fuck-ups, but I'll not do it because they're filming now. Oh, I just said it. Okay. No, but in all seriousness, one of the things is basically launching way too many markets at the same time. I remember with one of my companies, I launched Poland, Russia, and Germany at the same time. Great idea, or not. The packages never entered Russia. They got stuck at the customs. I got sued in Germany, and the girl that I had doing Polish customer service left Poland when she was 11 years old, so her written skills were really bad. I didn't know, they looked good. They had all these funky characters. But it wasn't really successful, and I had to withdraw from all these 3 markets. So that was one lesson. You should not launch too many markets at the same time. Another thing is, you need to make your homework. You need to adapt to the international audience. And also, do some kind of research on these markets in order to look and act as local as possible. And of course, not factoring all the costs was also one thing. Is like, it's so easy. You can just Google Translate things, right? It's so simple. But if you don't do the right investments, you would rather just kill your brand. So it's quite important that you have a holistic view of how much it would cost you totally to launch into a new market. I clicked on the clicker. Let's click again. Here we go. There we go. And some of the biggest challenges there are in cross-border, besides just the additional cost that I just told you about, obviously is localized payments. So this is a huge challenge, right? If you look into, for example, Netherlands, you cannot enter Netherlands without having Ideal, right? You cannot launch in Poland without having the direct banking alternatives, and so on and so on. So you need to have an understanding of these localized payment methods, but also have an understanding of how to handle international returns, because this could be very, very costly if you don't have the right setup for it. At the same time, language barriers are quite important. Finland, which is actually a neighboring country to Sweden, when we answered the calls in English, they just hang up immediately, even though they understand it, but they don't feel comfortable speaking English. So this is quite important to have in mind also. And last but not least, cultural differences. There are so many funny examples of just cultural differences in the e-commerce companies that I've worked in. And also from speaking in public events. I have a fun example about cultural differences. I was speaking at the biggest e-commerce conference in Greece. So I went to the chairman of the conference and I said, excuse me, what is the hashtag for the event? And he looked at me and was like, what? Excuse me, what is the hashtag for the event? And he looked at me and he said, you know, you guys are liberal in Sweden, but it's illegal to smoke hashtag in Greece. You cannot smoke it here. So, yeah. I'm not going to smoke any hashtag here, don't worry, Marta. So there's a lot of cultural differences and, you know. So the main question is, what should the e-commerce companies actually consider before going global? And this goes not only for e-commerce companies, this goes for all companies in general, but especially for e-commerce companies. And this is regardless if you're a B2C or a B2B player. So what I did to make it very simple for both of us is made a little list, the global checklist on how to act local. Easy, huh? Nice stuff. Cool, let's run through it quickly. So first of all, you need to be local, right? You need to make sure that you have the right language, and you need to make sure that you understand the cultural differences on holidays. One example I have about these holidays and the cultural differences, in Norway, in one day my traffic dropped 90%. And I thought there was a bug, so I was calling my technical guys, I was like, what's going on in Norway? There are no sales. And we made test orders, everything was working. And they were like, there are no bugs in Norway. What's going on? It's not a holiday in Norway, what's going on? Apparently, on that weekend, all freaking Norwegians leave to the mountains and they do skiing. And it's not something that I knew about. So no one is basically surfing on the internet. So you kind of drop your traffic 90% and you barely have any sales. So this is something that you learn, learning by failing. Another thing is having a customized product range. So not just copy-pasting whatever you have in a different market, but also adapting to what is important in that specific market, trying to be local. And of course, multiple languages and currency compatibility is quite important also. Like, I've done a lot of business in Eastern Europe, and now Ukrainians don't want to have web shops only in Russian. They want to have in Ukrainian as well, because it's important for them. And of course, in some markets, it's quite important having the trust marks or the local certifications. Like, this is a trusted commerce. And in some countries, this is important, and in other countries, it's even more important. And then the last point, it doesn't have a lot with e-commerce to do, but this is a mistake that I've learned. Always check the kind of the electrical outlet, because I've been traveling all the time, and then there's a different standard everywhere. So this is just an example of being local, basically. The second point is about pricing. So make sure you look at the competition and make sure that you are on the same level as the local players, right? So don't just take your prices that you have and just convert them into the local currency, because this gives you these really ugly prices, 4.72 cents. Like, what? So make sure that it looks quite local. Have these kind of nice prices. Make sure that the customers in this market are willing to pay for you and these prices. But also make sure that you calculate the whatever tax effects or whatever customs effects there are if these countries are outside the EU. Moreover, talking about currency, and of course you need to present stuff in the local currency if you want to look local, right? And you need to make sure that you have control of these currency movements. I've lost a lot of money in some countries in Eastern Europe because the currency was devaluated like 70%, the Ukrainian hryvnia as an example. And the prices were kind of the same. And then suddenly you lose so much money on this. So you need to kind of make sure that you have an understanding of what's going on. Same in Norway, the Norwegian krona went down 20% because of the oil prices, because it's an oil-dependent country. So you need to make sure that you don't lose money on this when you're working in local currencies. And make sure to do the homework, because I launched in Switzerland, and I was so sure they had euro. And I was like, oh, Switzerland, they're not buying anything from me. What's wrong with these guys? Because I was selling in euro, until like 6 months later, a customer emailed me and said, hey, why aren't you selling in Swiss francs? I was like, yeah, you don't have euro, right? So it's never going to be perfect. But also, another point is about the marketing, and there are different laws. Luckily, all these laws are kind of going to change now with the European Commission in the EU, so they're kind of going to look similar, all these e-commerce laws and marketing laws and stuff like this. But it's going to take a little time. But one of the times I got sued in Germany, many times, but one of them was because I didn't do this what do you call it, double opt-in. So when you ask people to sign up for your newsletter, they will sign up and then you'll have to confirm it again in order to put them on your newsletter list. Otherwise, you'll get sued because there are lawyers in Germany just sitting and waiting for someone to do a mistake. Their job is to find people launching into their market and not applying the local laws. There are even laws in Germany about how the checkout what the buttons in the checkout should be called. So do a little research before you. And now it seems like I'm scaring people here, Marta. What's going on? I was supposed to be positive, right? Okay, let's take some positive things instead. Exactly, I should be smiling. And of course, you need to make sure that you have, the right SEO strategy, making sure that you avoid words and pictures. There's a lot of different details, and social media, the understanding of the language in a certain market. Moreover, talking about logistics, this is also quite important, but it's getting less and less important because everything is kind of looking the same. But you need to make sure that you present to your customer. Last mile is quite important when it comes to e-commerce because you are shipping the packages or the products in the way that the customers are expecting you to. And there's also this discussion about free shipping, and in some countries, like in Germany or in Finland, they're quite used to free returns. So just take a look at the competition and what they're doing. What are the local return policies? Should they return to a local address, or are they returning to another country? Because that will probably decrease your conversion rate. The next point on the list is basically payments, and I mentioned this before, and I think payments is actually very crucial to be local. If you see some markets that are quite depending on cash on delivery or depending on credit cards, or there's maybe sometimes a fear of using credit cards, or it's dominated by direct banking, and this needs to be adapted in these markets. So, moreover, talking about devices, and just make sure that how the internet penetration in this market and how many are using actually mobile, because this differs a lot from if you look at the Southern European countries and the Northern European countries. What we see in the Nordics is that over half of the traffic is actually coming from mobile devices now. That's phones, smartphones, and tablets. But if you look into Spain or even, I wouldn't say less developed countries now, but if you say the countries like Greece or Turkey, for example, the mobile usage is a little bit less. What's funny about just devices is if you look at another continent like Africa, is that these guys have a very high penetration of using mobile devices. So it's very different, and you cannot just guess your way through it. You need to look at the stats. So another point is the legal and tax and customs. So basically these needs to be adapted, and there are a lot of laws about this now, and how you present your taxes in the European Union. So make sure that you take a look into this as well. And of course, customer service, should you make it in English? Should it be open 24/7 or only a certain number of hours? Should you have it in-house? Should you outsource it? Would you use Google Translate to answer email? It's all these kind of questions that you need to look at, and where you want to position your company. But also operational compliance, having some kind of the local terms and conditions for your web shop, and making sure that you report to the authorities if needed, if you have a certain threshold. So that was the checklist. Are you guys still with me? Anyone sleeping? There's one still. Great. So another topic I want to talk about is, the change that has happened in the industry, because we went from talking about e-commerce and m-commerce and t-commerce and I don't even know, and everything became unified. So we're just talking about commerce, right? Because when I go into a store, I don't say, hey, I'm going to bring my m-commerce device and I'm going to search for something, then I'm going to go home and use my t-commerce device. So this is something that has changed. From a consumer point of view, everything is basically commerce. And we're always connected. I saw some crazy numbers from Google about how connected we are, and we use our phones over 160 times a day. It's insane. So we're very connected, and the smart devices are helping in this, because they're basically making sure that we're always online. We use more than one device, and now with all these Internet of Things and all these smart devices, smartwatch, smart I don't know what, necklace, everything is connected all the time. Smart homes. And we love switching between those devices because this little smartphone that you have in your pocket is actually more powerful than the machines that put us on the moon. If we landed on the moon, that's another topic. So it's kind of replacing everything, right? You read your books in it, you can listen to music, it's your alarm clock, you check the weather, it's everything in this little device. It's insane. So if you go back in time and you see, this has changed rapidly, all this mobile. So you see a lot of different e-commerce companies thinking mobile first. And they just use this term, but I hope they can actually understand it also. So what has happened from a consumer point of view is that people, maybe including myself, has developed something that a phobia. It's called nomophobia, and this is true. This is not a joke. So people are afraid of losing their phones or losing connection or not, having power or connection through their phone. So this is a phobia, nomophobia, which is quite insane. And if you go back in time, let's go back to the mid-'60s, where you're just watching a screen and you're watching a TV or listening to a radio, and they were telling you, this is what's going on in the world. This person is a good person, that person is bad. And you're just receiving information. What happened in the mid-'80s is that we started the connection era. We started connecting with each other, and this was kind of the area where internet was born. But what has happened 10 years ago is we entered the protection era. So I have my smart device, and I choose which people I want to follow on Twitter, which friends I want to check their feeds on my Facebook, and which people I want to interact with and follow. So I'm kind of in control, basically, of what's going on. I download the apps that I want, I talk with the people I want, I choose my relations. So this has been a tremendous change where basically consumers became dictators. So they want to have free shipping, free returns, they want to have good prices, they want to have this and that. And this is kind of pushing the competition tremendously, right? So this is a tremendous change we have seen. What is more fascinating about it is that people are now more powerful than brand. You have a guy who can just write a tweet and say, hey, this company sucks. And you can have thousands of people just retweeting or liking it or sharing it. It's a huge difference. So when it comes to internationalization, I have an example from one of our companies that launched a new e-commerce quite recently. And we were just doing we're doing a little marketing on Facebook, and suddenly we saw great conversion rate in a certain country, Czech Republic, and this is a Swedish company, right? So suddenly now Czech is the biggest market online for this Swedish company. We don't know why, because a few influencers just tweeted a few pictures and put a few pictures on Instagram, and they had some fans on Facebook, and suddenly now this brand has a tremendous brand awareness in Czech Republic, and it's the biggest online market, not offline, but online, and it took 3 weeks. It's crazy. So you have this social power. And looking at big data, I don't like using big data. Big data, everyone's talking about big data a couple of years ago. Big data is like teenage sex, Everyone's talking about it, but they don't know what it is. So data is important if you know what you're doing with it. Smart data. Look at Amazon. 1/3 of their sales, according to them, is through their own recommendations. So they know you better than you know yourself. And technology is quite important. Yes, technology is quite important. Don't get a heart attack, it's a joke, don't worry. So technology is quite important. And the online customers are getting more and more illoyal towards e-commerce shops. So how can you survive? What should you do? So what you have to do is basically be consumer friendly. 73% report that they change e-retailer if they feel that the service is not good enough. Not that it's bad, but it's not even good enough. 73%. So there is actually a very important key to survive here. And that is customer satisfaction. Customer satisfaction, basically. Because there has been a price war going on, and you see it in the electronic industry, right? There's someone who's willing to sell you that iPhone €1 cheaper than the other guy, and then it goes on and goes on and goes on. So there is no end for this price war. And if you're gonna get stuck in the price war, you will die, unfortunately. You'll kill your margins, and you'll have to, there's no business afterwards. So the key of survival is basically having customer satisfaction. And this goes regardless if you look at what industry, what vertical. So what has happened, this is actually an insider slide that I had in one of my companies, but I thought it would be good to show it for you guys, because I had this printed on a wall for the employees. So we kind of put a strategy, so how should we survive? What should we do? So looking at the past, we were looking from stuff from a point of difference. We were market driven, we tried to be competitive, we had employees, right? We had consumers, and we had short-term goals. We need to have sales now, come on. And we try to work with loyalty. Now, the vibrant future that you have is, instead of looking at a point of difference, you're looking from a point of view. You're passionate about what you're doing. You don't have employees, but you have missionaries that they love your company and they love to represent you. And basically, your consumers are not just consumers that buy your stuff and leave. They're advocates. They talk about you in the social media. They tell their friends, I love this company because I got a great service from them. And you're working much more long-term. And that will be the key to change the loyalty into love. So I think you can take this and apply it on any other company. At the same time, online marketing has also been changing rapidly. Many years ago, I just bought a lot of impressions on the biggest online newspapers. And that has been also changing more towards, performance-based marketing. If you generate sales for me, I'm willing to pay for you. And the biggest killer in this area, oops, did I have their name here? Actually, it's a bit awkward because twice when I did this slide, I had Google presenting right after me. So it's always a little bit awkward. I hope they're not doing this after me today. So do I feel lucky that over half of my marketing budget goes to one single company? And the click prices are getting up more and more and more? Probably not. I'm getting addicted to it. I'm just buying more and more clicks. And you get hooked. So you should work more with content. So great content is the best sales tool in the world. And you need to generate this wow experience. When people get your package or when they get the order delivered from you, they need to have this wow experience. This is not a wow experience, by the way. So this is a friend of mine from Sweden. This is not a wow experience. He put, I don't know, whatever he put, everything he had at home, he put inside that package. So this is not a wow experience. And you should also work with branding by selling. So while you're positioning yourself as a brand, you're also selling, right? So looking back in time, 6 years ago, everything was working, with TV advertisement, and there was a little understanding of how you would buy digital media. So consumers have been spending a lot of time on digital channels. And in 2013, this increased tremendously. If you look even in 2016, I don't have these numbers, the consumption of digital media has changed tremendously more and more. People are stopped watching TV, they're watching YouTube, or they're watching Netflix or HBO or whatever. Everything is becoming more digitalized. But we as e-commerce players, we don't really have that kind of understanding because we're still investing our marketing budgets in the wrong channels, like print as an example. So we need to have kind of an understanding of where should I spend my money, especially when you go into other markets. Where can I find my customers? So, final word of advice is, when it comes to internationalization, the workload to launch in a big market is not bigger or not heavier than launching in a small one. With all that said, I would like to thank you for not falling asleep. Thank you.